Welcome. Welcome to the Poetry Flash virtual reading series. I'm Joyce Jenkins, Poetry Flash editor and director, coming to you from Poetry Flash in Berkeley. Today we are pleased to present a contributor's reading of current and former poet laureates for Colossus Home, an anthology of lives in and out of place. Please see the chat box for the link to the Colossus Press site. That's where you can purchase this anthology to support the fight against the Bay Area's housing crisis. www.colossuspress.org/buy. All proceeds will go to Moms for Housing. Remember to visit poetryflash.org for book reviews, interviews, and events. To sign up for our event emails, go to poetryflash.org and scroll down to Join Our Mailing List. First, here is Sarah Beal, co-editor of Colossus Home, to say a few words about the anthology. She will be immediately followed by Richard Silberg, associate editor of Poetry Flash, who will introduce today's poets.
Thank you, Joyce. I just wanted to say hello to everybody and thank Joyce and Poetry Flash for featuring this project. And I wanted to acknowledge my co-editor, Carla Brundage, who worked really hard with me on this project, and Fred Dodsworth, who's here today, who was our book designer and typesetter. And I just wanted to thank them and all the amazing poets that contributed to the book and all the wonderful poets and former poet laureates who are reading in this reading. And I wanted to just say that the fight for housing justice continues, especially in this pandemic era that we're having. A lot of people lost their housing, even with some of the ways the government tried to protect people from evictions. So it's more important than ever to look at housing justice. And I wanted to say that the Moms for Housing House is now a transitional living space for women and their children. And all the money from our book is still going to support Moms for Housing and the work they're doing. Thank you for having us, Joyce and Poetry Flash.
Okay, well, we're really pleased to be doing this reading. It's important. It's such important work, as Sarah has given you a little hint of. We're helping people, and what could be better really than that? And poetry too. We're really cooking on all cylinders. Now, I'm going to briefly introduce our readers. We've got 5 readers. There are many accomplished voices in this anthology in Colossus Home, but we've chosen to concentrate our reading on 5 present or former poet laureates, and we're going to present them in alphabetical order because we can sing the alphabet to ourselves as we listen to the poetry. Our first reader is Sarah Kobrinsky. She is her book, Nighttime on the Other Side of Everything, is we may have a chance to hear that in person. That's to be decided, but she's been something of a peripatetic poet. She was born in Canada. She was raised in North Dakota. She spent time in England, and now here she is in California. She is the former poet laureate of Emeryville, California. So here we are with Sarah. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Poetry Flash, and Sarah, and Carla, and Fred. Actually, I think one of the first times I met Fred was halfway through my term as Poet Laureate of Emeryville. I was priced out of Emeryville, and we had to leave Emeryville. And so this is definitely an important subject to me and most artists living in the Bay. And so this is an incredible anthology of the amazing voices here. And I just feel really lucky to be a part of it. And yeah, so I'm gonna kind of stick with the theme of motherhood in the poems I read today. I'll start with the one I have in Colossus Home. This is called Payday. As soon as he falls asleep, his parents take his piggy bank down from the top shelf of his closet, the weight of his dreams in their hands. He is saving up for a bike, though they can't bring themselves to think of that now. Of course, they wouldn't do it if they didn't have to. They swear they'll put it all back next week when they get paid. They'll be more generous than the tooth fairy. They hope he doesn't wake. I'll read a couple from this one. This is my book, Nighttime on the Other Side of Everything, about motherhood. This is called Dripping. Happy mothers sit in a circle feeding babies, accidentally dripping breast milk into each other's coffee. How wonderful life is, so unpredictable and sweet. Here's one called Afterbirth. I didn't eat the placenta or bury it under a tree. I don't know where it is. Maybe in a biohazard bag somewhere in a landfill full of other biohazard bags with countless needles, tumors, spleens. But one thing I do know for sure, the kid is here with me. And the next poem I'm going to read, also from this book, it's not a mother poem so much as a female poem, and it's sort of a reverse Pygmalion. And it's called My Black-Eared Lady. Remove her dainty tea gloves, her handbag, and her hat. Take away her underthings, bloomers, slips, sundry whatnots. Deepen the lines in her aging face. Stain her teeth a feral yellow. Play her your gramophone to rough the edges of her words. Make her repeat fuck until it comes out of her naturally. Not at will, but beyond will. Instinctive and necessary as breath. Watch her hair grow wild and grisly. Desiccate her lips in the tracks of her skin. Steal her from the ladies' lunch and drop her at the bar. Let the drinking begin here early. Show her a new kind of music. Lead her downtown where sirens sing the arias in the streets. Teach her to stumble on sharp stiletto heels. Let her trip until she stays down, so deliciously low, so horribly dirty, the angels would weep for her. Cold face, cold hands, cold feet. Oh, wouldn't it be lovely? Wouldn't it? And the last piece I'm going to read, during the George Floyd protest last summer, I saw a lot of people with the sign that read, "All mamas were summoned," when he cried out for his mother. And this is called Phantom Letdown. And for those of you who've breastfed, you know what letdown is and how, like, decades later, you can still, as an emotional response, have this sort of phantom letdown. So this is called Phantom Letdown. All mamas were summoned when he cried out for his mother. A baby cries. A baby cries inconsolably, and I can still feel it. That tingle in my breasts, the ghost in the mammary glands, the ghost in the milk machine. Even though it's been years since I last nursed my son, we are hardwired to feed. We are hardwired to give comfort. The sound of a cry, of public grief, and that milk comes in. The ghost milk, the milk of the ancestors, the healing milk that reminds us to stay soft. And this is how our sorrow is transmitted. And this is how our joy is passed down. And this is how we guarantee for future generations that the wails of our hearts will always be heard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Sarah. Our next reader is D.L. Lang. She was a recent laureate of Vallejo, California, 217 to 219. She's a very prolific writer, 12 books of poetry. Hoo-ha. Most recently, Paradise Collectors, a book of Jewish poetry, and Armor Against the Dawn, poetry of protest. She's also got a spoken word album, so she's been working hard. Here she is, D.L. Lang.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here. The first poem I'll read is the one that appears in Colossus Home. It's called Everyone Deserves a Home. In this wealthiest of nations, no one should be homeless, left out in the cold to roam, yearning for a hot meal, living in fear for their safety, unprotected from nature's fury, unable to survive, unable to thrive. Down with the landlords whose hearts have turned to stone, whose only metric is profit when purchasing a home. Down with these unrestricted rents that drive regular folks out of homes, forcing workers into long commutes, while the wealthy reap all the rewards. Down with these unregulated housing costs that drive property taxes sky high, that leave home buyers underwater, that price out the masses from settling down. Down with only temporary shelters. Down with chasing our fellow humans from city to city to city to city. Guarantee every person a home where all can stay warm, raise their families, and feel safe. Stop catering to the wealthy in these United States. I have a selection of poems that kind of touch on home, anything from the personal to the global to traveling, leaving home. This next poem is called Road Trip. A vortex of starlings in an early morning sky, snow-capped mountains on the horizon line, back to the warm embrace of the mother road, the ghosts of fellow travelers whistling in the night, dancing to jazzy piano notes lingering in the air, up before sunrise and into the arms of a starry sky. The chilly morning air shakes off the dust of dreams. Mountain silhouettes caress an endless highway as the morning sunlight kisses gorgeous gorges. Desert birds pirouette among fiery pink clouds. Every crow says hello on mountains capped with snow. Singing out into the starlight with Orion as our guide, a river of headlights flashing before our eyes, floating down the freeway, riding waves of joy, feeling as light as a cloud drifting through the desert, the music an oasis of bliss carrying us back home. This next one is called Huck's Hexadecagon. There's a round building in Huck that ran out of luck, a pancake house off of Old 66, where in '04 I once had breakfast during a cross-country Greyhound trip, buying up postcards en route to Vallejo a decade before she would become my home. My first conscious stop on the highway that officially died on the day that I turned 2. Her ghost haunts the landscape, with its memories of America before carbon copycat corporate chain culture. These days, towns are just names on a sign, a blur flashing past on the interstate, in a sea of gas stations and fast food joints. The restaurant now lies in ruins, having closed not long after my visit. Rusted, scarred, and tagged, she is a husk. Her former culinary glory now only a whisper in the memories of travelers past. One day she shall fade into desert dust, her hexadecagon, decades gone, forgotten in the unforgiving sands of time. Left speechless upon this return visit, I silently agree with the graffiti left by some anonymous scribe that no human being is illegal on stolen land, and heed the highway who beckons me home. This next one is called This Year of Our 20th Reunion. Childhood is a place of ghosts, people and places passing onward, like sunflowers uprooted from a field, existing only in hazy shards of memories. Who any of us were back then is lost to time, having been swept up in our brand new lives, replete with mistakes and successes, careers, children and spouses, motorcycles, cars and houses, new last names and nicknames. What is there to return to except ourselves, now polished into priceless shining gems by the rivers of our relationships? What spark of childhood do we wish to rekindle? Long lost friends shall run to embrace, because it may be the last time we see their face. Does it really matter who's the richest, who got famous, or the best dressed? What youthful dreams do we seek to inhale? What words will rise from within our souls that we just couldn't say 2 decades ago? What moments do we wish to reminisce, and what pain would we rather stay buried? Whether those far-off years were filled with camaraderie or the depths of hell, no matter who you are now, I wish you all well. Listen. Listen. Do you hear that? Our mother, she is calling. She weeps with a broken heart. She begs for her children to treat her with love, for her children to act out of gratitude. Their existence relies upon her. But only some of her children choose love. They take her messages to heart, and they shout them from the rooftops. Others still heartlessly plunder her house, her patience, her time, her heart, leaving it barren. Her tears flood our streets. She bathes in tsunamis of sorrow. She exhales in hurricanes that cry out, "Wake up! Listen to your Mother Earth. She is calling. Do not let her cries go unheard. Hear her, so that we may turn, that she may turn, that we might all be welcome in her home, in the only home we've ever known. These excesses that we chase in the name of fortune will soon come to swallow us if we do not turn towards a life of simplicity, a life of sustainability, a life that respects all other life. The solutions are right in front of us. We hold within us the vision. All we must do is act." Like Sarah, I also lived in many different places, and these are a few of the spaces that whisper home. I gaze out my balcony at terracotta tiles, underneath the watchful stance of Orion. I reminisce with a smile, for these are the same style as my grandparents' house, thousands of miles away in Germany. By the waterfront, I oft arrive to roam, watching the ferries as they float home. Down the river flowing out to the sea, there the seagulls cry out to remind me of childhood days spent on Galveston Beach. Here it is as if these spaces that whisper home were just within my reach. Our people passionately parade down her pavement during all seasons, whether to protest, rejoice, or remember. They dance in dazzling costumes with puppetry, creating visions that transport me to the joyous season of Mardi Gras in my early Louisiana years. Out on the swamps of Mare Island, where her shores are kissed by the bay, you might find me wandering someday around the ruins of the naval base, across rusted railroad tracks, whose whistles are now only the songs of ghosts, dancing down dusty dirt trailways that wind through prairie grass as I did in my Oklahoma youth. Down at the townhouse jams the band, joining together in harmony, weaving community together with a song as the melodies of camaraderie burst forth out onto the street, sparking memories so sweet when the crowd sings along to folk and country songs, just like at my synagogue in the shadow of Mount Tam. For between the roar of cheering crowds who might by chance hear some verse, in these calm moments I have found that this space rekindles my heart, whispering tales of the days of yore, feeling as familiar in my soul as each place that has come before, and I know that I am home. Like her flocks of migrating birds, Vallejo, Vallejo, long may she soar. I'd like to end with a poem that I wrote during our long period of staying home. It's called The Fading Aura of Our Joy. We're all searching for tiny slices of normal, with a side of joyous abandon covered in comfort, as we stare into the ever-expanding abyss. Perhaps a mere sprinkling of these good times is the inkling of hope we need to carry us all through. Communal happiness has always kept us afloat, connecting us to smiling souls swaddled in bliss. Pretty please, a sliver of the cheesecake of distraction to balance out this whirligig cut loose from its mooring, leaving us endlessly tumbling forth into the unknown. In this dizzying time of cosmic disruption, the path forward is a mix of rust and glitter, wandering through this cavernous maze of midnight, with only the soft flicker of a candle to guide us. May we rebuild this world for the better, having found enough gratitude in this cracked existence to know exactly where to lay the cement of love. Thank you.
Yeah, Lang, thank you. Thank you very much. Up next is Juanita J. Martin. She is the first poet laureate of Fairfield, California. That's way back 2010 to 2012. So she was right there giving birth to the laureateship in Fairfield. So that's just great. Her poetry book is The Lighthouse Beckons. Along with many other activities, she reads regularly on Vallejo's Ask. Let me try to, easy for somebody else to say, Vallejo's Oscat Radio Art Beat. So here she is, Juanita J. Martin.
Thank you, Richard. I want to say that it's a privilege to be here. Thank you, Joyce Jenkins. Thank all the poets. Some of them I've had the pleasure of reading with, and some not. But it's been just really great to be here. I want to thank Fred Dodsworth personally because he suggested that I write for this anthology. So I thank you, Fred, from the bottom of my heart for doing this, suggesting that I write for this. And these first two poems I'm going to read are directly from the anthology. And the first one is called Where Do We Sleep Tonight? Both of these are kind of short, but they hit home, I think. The first one is about a mom who's on the street looking for a place to sleep for tonight. And she's with her daughter. And even though this is made up, there are a lot of moms and daughters out on the streets looking for a place to sleep. And so even though, like I said, this is made up, this is based on reality. Where do we sleep tonight? Where do we sleep tonight? Her tender eyes seem to say to her mom. Her name's Monica, Mom Brandy, whose tears had dried on dust-ridden faces. Sweet innocence against their street-worn bodies, longed for food, only second to much needed sleep. The second one is called We Need Housing. The shouts came from all around. We need housing, not empty promises, political innuendo, or a nightly bed at a shelter. Babies crying, politicians lying, and moms are sometimes dying. When will we get a reprieve from this nightmare? We need housing for moms, our civil right, our human right. Limited resources drive our plight, where we're bound by paper statistics, domestic shackles that give no money to buy a home. Homes sit in silence with no life inside, where we sit homeless, our children raised by the streets. And I selected some specific poems, some that deal with homelessness, and others that deal with what we've been through the last year and a half, and that is the pandemic. And then one, I want to end with a poem that I wrote at the start of the pandemic. Basically, I was the first one of 2020 that I wrote about the pandemic, and that one actually got published. So this first one's called Shopping Cart Era. Shunned by the elite in these hard times, transient beings caught in society's web strive to exist where being poor is colorless. Sun beats down on parched tongues and sunburned skin. Homeless men and women fall prey to a broken economy. They're not all begging, as some would assume. A daily deluge of concrete mattresses, cold spray, and local discards is what they can expect. A homemade sign that reads, "Can you spare anything?" By nightfall will become a bed in an alley or doorway. Silver baskets filled with morsels and rags rumble lonely sidewalks, roam city streets, come to rest in a sea of destitution. What the year 2020 was like. The year 2020, a year of pandemonium, pandemic virus with no cure in sight. The end of the world, closer than we first thought. California was burning. The sun was blood red, baking us from the inside out, with scorching temps of 100 plus. Day was night and night was day. Food and supplies were scarce. Even cash money disappeared right before our eyes. Masks of all kinds were the fashion, while all we wanted was to breathe. Zoom this, Zoom that, stayed viral from the classroom to jobs online, but not all were loving and kind. We stayed together but apart. Black lives mattered, but love did not always reciprocate from our pallor brothers and sisters. From Congress to the president, politics as usual, where nothing made sense. No one can afford to pay their mortgage or their rent. Homes were empty and stagnant, with families on the streets, trying to survive, pushing shopping carts, hustling for money, looking for something to eat. And this next one is called Get Off My Neck. It's a tribute to George Floyd. On May 25th, 2020, the news of George Floyd's death floored me. I became ill at the thought. The stench of racism is a smell as rancid as vomit itself. George was only 46 when he was arrested for passing a counterfeit bill. What came later can only be described as a heinous act of racism and homicide at the hands of 4 white policemen. 2 restrained him with cuffs on. Another pressed his knee into George's neck. Still another officer kept the crowd back, not allowing anyone to intervene on George's behalf. even as medical personnel arrived. A man treated like an animal laid still on the ground, dying a horrible death, gasping for air, face down in his own juices. Minutes after, angry crowds protested, while memorials, prayer vigils convened late into the night. Society, like a snake, swallows a rat whole, swallows us whole. In this world, we want to breathe without society on our necks. I can imagine George with his dying breath saying, "I can't breathe, get off my neck." And finally, my last piece is called Before COVID-19. I took a long whiff of yesterday so I could remember what it was like before, when the wind whispered my name, rain danced upon my shoulders. I tapped into nature's beauty I once took for granted, flowers that turned their petals to a laughing sun, trees that recolor earth. Now inside, during a recent spring, effects of a virus, I inhaled freshly mowed grass against an uncertain sky, but the scent is not the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Juanita.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
Okay, here comes Kim Shuck. She has read for the Flash many times. In fact, she's read for so many people. She's really been a worker in the vineyards. She is the seventh laureate of San Francisco. Her most recent book is Deer Trails, which was the City Lights publication for her laureateship. She's a member of the Cherokee Nation. She's won many awards, too many to mention here, but I do want to mention, since it's part of the work that the Flash does, she recently won the Northern California Book Reviewers Groundbreaker Award, because she is a groundbreaker. Here she is, Kim Shuck.
Thank you. One of these days, I suspect I will get better at hearing my bio read. Thank you for having me. It's an incredible honor to read with these other poets. And here we go. I'm actually not going to read my poem from Colossus Home. It's really good. And if you want to read it, you should buy the book. These are all poems I wrote during the lockdown. I become the wanderer, a transformation not yet complete, become the ambivalent edge in the catalog of floor and step squeaks. Predictions rest gently on warped glass. Through closed windows, the world runs and slips. Sing balance, sing world balance. These are the pockets of sound we forget ourselves in, the ways we pretend we are not. We are a shiver in the water, home, the place where we collect at low ebb. The day slides sideways, rain, rain in the night. The walkers stop and stare up at the window. I wave, they wave. We gather in the low places. Circle of driftwood words, the grains of sand driven by determined water, nail heads tight in the grain. Circle. You call the lightning and I'll call the rain, together looking down into clear canal water, across the bay, through this air, a handful of abalone, of story, a cape of coastal sage. The salamanders gather at the foot of the stairs. We wait for sunrise, a circle of driftwood, and sing a song of healing. Unfold your best dance. The poison of centuries collected in wise toes calls for release. Dress carefully. Coil all of your medicine around you, those heel-worn angers and grandma's best earrings, mom's recipe for bell pepper and ginger, Weave the dried flowers of a lifetime into your hair. Call them all. Circle the cars to bring the rattles where the headlights cross. Stand, breathe, and dance. We are building water from first principles. We've called the bones, called a song and another song. The ravens from up the hill drop pieces of evergreen, arrange joyful things in every corner. This is the cautious edge. We stand where the redwoods were, where the roots spoke, one and another. As the singing begins, our neighbor child sends soap bubbles up the street. The rain wind winds along these ways. The knife tip catches just under the skin. I can hear the voices outside trying to solve the world like a puzzle, a fabric of counterfactual musings and fear. The feral cat comes when I call him, runs eagerly across the street, but he won't eat the food I put out. He just stands next to the heater vent, paws kneading the floor. Because scar tissue is tough, the knife tip catches. The drums, rattles, bells, the ways of singing to the universe with feet and smoke, with community hearts. Who vanished this week? I'm a drumhead made of scars. The first front step shifts underfoot. My neighbor runs, shifted into the night. The water runs, shifted under the sidewalk, under the street, dances a West Coast prayer to the scars that run like water too. Rain on corrugated plastic, like blown rain on window glass, like shattered silk, the voices I would recognize in dreams. Out the window, the white orchids are blooming, surprisingly cold. The voices I recognized in last night's dream, the buildings, all window and wall, all door and wall, the glue on my fingers, a thing I recognize like a voice, like a cold white orchid from grandma's garden. The lilacs are barely starting to leaf, an open door, a root that reaches the cut end of March, every fraying fiber, wild to the world, blooming. Sunlight isn't simple. Cutting shapes on the bedspread, patrols like the feral, a solid tabby self shouldering a wind that will bring rain. It's not a cure. I pick up one word after another, and they aren't cures either. We aren't out of work. Our work for now is keeping each other well. A stone in each corner, a word in each corner, dancing prayer feet. We shift through the house like a fretful tide, like sunlight, sometimes flashing code, cloud and sun. The fern trees, the wild grape uncoil. We, pulled by unpractice, flow to a familiar high tide mark and then draw back. Prayers offered to a bowl of tap water, then given onto the tree roots, an acorn in my pocket so I don't lose my way, a way through. Can you make yourself strong enough to change? Because we are shapeshifting now. Can you feel the bone flow? Thoughts like rivers drawing new beds, like obsolete roadways feeling for a way through. We are the cure, not one tree, split grounding, one clean thought, but all of our messy meander, our beautiful winding, impatient care. And finally, rainwater caught in the fold of a leaf. I blow on the surface. It's just a small wish. Remember what unseen thing blows wishes across my surface. Something left stars in this stone, and I found them this afternoon in the light coming down off the hill, dark in the quartz. Remember honeybee, murmur, just the right tone to open the flower, to open hope. Thank you so much for having me today. It's really a pleasure reading with these other poets. It's a huge pleasure being in this book, which you should buy. Thank you so much. Poetry Flash, everyone.
And thank you to you, Kim. Thank you so much. Okay, our fifth reader is Kimi Sugioka. She did a memorable reading from a recent book at Moe's books back when we were actually all flesh and blood people together. She is a current laureate. She's doing it right now as laureate for Alameda. So she's out there happening. She's a poet and a songwriter and an educator. She's been an educator for decades. So here we go with Kimi Sugioka.
Thank you, Richard. I love being introduced by Richard. It always feels like an honor. And thank you to Poetry Flash and to Sarah and Carla and Fred for putting this book together. Such important work. Now, if we could just get everybody housed, that would be really great, huh? Okay, so I'll read one of my poems from Colossus and then some other things. Home poem. The page has always been my refuge, the way in and the way out, witness and solace, the steadfast path to truth. The house that I live in is never tidy, clean, well decorated. I live inside the poem with birdsong and soliloquy. Now, these poems, thank you, it's funny, in a way they're all about home. Even though they're not, and I didn't write them that way. I'm thinking a lot about what's been happening lately with the Asian community, and several of these reflect that. Crap, I forgot to check the time. Okay. I thought that you would be able to tell us apart by now. I thought that you liked my long hair and winning smile. I thought that you considered our teriyaki and sashimi a delicacy. I thought that you found the gold tones of our skin attractive. I thought that you had forgotten about us, that we had become invisible. I thought that you knew that all of this land is stolen. I thought that we had been here for so long that you stopped perceiving us as foreign. I thought that you appreciated how hard we have worked to be here. I thought that I might live here, afraid for my life, just like everybody else, without being specifically targeted. I thought we had paid our dues when we worked on and died by the thousands on your railroads, when you dropped napalm and Agent Orange on our villages, when you threw us in prison for our ancestry, when you redlined our districts to keep us out, when you refused us citizenship, when you bombed us in Vietnam, Japan, Korea, Lebanon, Laos, Cambodia, the Philippines. I thought we were just another set of immigrants that our elders allowed to walk unmolested through the streets of their neighborhoods, to shop for dinner, go to church, visit relatives, or just walk. I was wrong. And this poem, I just wrote. None of my poems have names anymore. I don't know why. We live and we give moment to moment of our tangled and frayed selves, shackled to shadows of flight, racked with judgment that brines and goads our intricate couplings and mutations. We share in vignettes and silhouettes, threading an elusive needle of communion before the moment recedes and the drought of solitude floods our cells. What sustenance is this? Huddled and suffering, estrangement and censure, ever longing to wrangle, embrace. The mourning doves are fighting. The wings of the manta rays have been sheared off. Maxine Hung Kingston is crying. The grandmothers are crying. The grandfathers are crying. They are being beaten because hue of skin, because shape of eye, because the vitriol of a president who became president because of white supremacy proved that this American legacy is alive and well. We come here with love and hope. We come here without malice, or we didn't come here. We were born here. Our parents were born here. Our grandparents. Is this a contest to see who is more American? If so, we all lost together. Thank you. Tree wisdom. If a willow could speak, would it tell a different story than the hemlock or white oak? Would it confuse the facts or order of events? Would one blame the other for deprivation of water or light? Would it insist that hemlocks don't deserve to live, that white oaks are more honorable than sweet gum, that magnolias spread tree rot and should be eradicated? Or, in order to share light, would they shift their branches ever so slightly to enable others to grow? If only the trees could speak. Thank you. Okay, I think I'll finish with this poem. Restless and troubled, the moon hisses and recoils above massacres below, the covenants of conquerors. See how she weeps in cudgeled acquiescence. Blood memories of a man's hunger for yellow meat, how he anticipated my body, his flesh trophy, his bedpost notch. The merchant marine who told me that every ship was plastered with pinups of exotic Asian girls, like erotic invitations at every island port. They all look like you, he said. Now I am old enough to disregard, soon old enough to be knocked down, just like that America. Just another bone to chew on the false, vain, and brutal mythology you spawned in your depraved necrophiliac splicing of all of Asia, of all of Africa, of all earthen-colored people. But we do not believe in pining and bleeding for the affection of our enslavers. We hold forth, hold on, hold out. We hold our truth to be self-evident, noisy and raucous, when dismissed, when defiled, when attacked. We are not your fetishized, sexualized femme fatales, no. We of obsidian and jasper are here to stay on this or any land that isn't yours, that you carved into profiteering parcels that we do not accede to. We are armed, cocked, loaded, and ready to rumble America, ready to retrieve, hold, cradle, and lullaby the earth, sun, and moon. Thank you so much, everybody.
All right, Kimi. Thank you. Hard truths. Let me thank all of these fine poets. Our deepest thanks to you all. Thanks to Carla Brundage and Sarah Beal for this important anthology. And thank you to Fred Dodsworth, who's our old friend and a deep flasher. Here comes Joyce.
Hi, all. Thanks for that patience with that moment. I just wanted to let you know that to purchase this anthology and to support Moms for Housing, please go to the chat box and see the link. And the link is www.colossuspress.org/buy. And that will support this very, very worthy cause. Thank you all for joining us. Really appreciate it. Keep an eye out at poetryflash.org for upcoming readings. Thanks.